Back in 2012, my friend group and I stumbled upon a bunch of vintage Pokemon TCG sealed product at a local peddler's mall for dirt cheap. At this point in the Pokemon TCG, nobody cared. You could get the cards super cheap. We continued to build and play decks all summer long, and then periodically, a couple of years after that, in 2014, I moved to the other side of the country and had no one to play with, but I still had all of these decks. I still wanted to build and play more vintage. Quality content was hard to find, and there wasn't really anyone actively creating content. You had to go back to old Pojo forums or YouTube videos from 2006. In 2017, that itch had still not been scratched for me, so I figured I would try my hand at creating content, starting with the decks that I thought would be most popular so that I could gauge my audience and see if that community was out there to engage with. Those decks being the iconic base fossil builds. To my surprise and joy, a lot of other vintage Pokemon TCG videos started going up. More people were actively playing online on TCG1. Blog posts were being updated after years of inactivity. I've done a lot more vintage gameplay since 2017, and there have been a lot more vintage events to follow thanks to people like Jason Klaczynski that are keeping the format alive. Even though the base fossil format only contains 3 sets, players have continued to innovate and try new ideas, and the base fossil format is in a different place now than it was 8 years ago. And that's going to be the focus of this mini-series, is looking at how the metagame has changed, what are the new deck lists, and where do we go from here with this captured lightning in a bottle that is early days Pokemon TCG. First and foremost, the biggest overall change to the base fossil metagame is that it's no longer solely focused on aggro. Instead of following that insanity model of what cards can deal the most damage most efficiently, we've moved into more methodical, drawn-out gameplay. Your major counters to aggro have become more popular, like your big normal types like Kangaskhan, Lickitung, Chansey, and grindy Pokemon like Mr. Mime. With these Pokemon finding their way into more and more decks, aggro lost some of its power. You begin to see this in your trainer bases too. Instead of running 4+ powers, 4 gust of wind, 4 energy removal in all of your aggro builds, naturally we have also moved to the counters to those cards, and so you see them less frequently. Turns out that Lass is the most powerful card in base fossil. And Psyduck isn't far behind. In the old metagame, when decks were running 80% trainers just so they could dig through their deck and get their setups as quickly as possible, that deck's viability goes way down when there are multiple cards in other decks telling them they can't use those trainers this turn. Cards like Plus Power and Energy Removal were at their most powerful when you could drop multiple copies on the same turn. It was worth hoarding them in your hand. Lass is going to punish you for hoarding, and Psyduck is going to stall until you can get a Lass. And I'm not saying that aggro is completely out of the base fossil metagame, it's just if you want to go aggro, you go hyper aggro. We're talking Electrode here. As Lickitung has become more and more popular because of its ability to just disrupt you for 1 energy while also incrementally stacking damage, rage effects became more popular, like on Dodrio or Tauros. Oh, you're not dealing enough damage to OHKO me? Well, in that case, you're just going to make me more powerful so I can OHKO you. Dodrio has even seemingly edged out Scyther as the go-to rock, paper, scissors Pokemon in the Electabuzz Hitmonchan cycle. In that Dodrio resists Hitmonchan but is weak to Electabuzz, whereas Scyther resisted Hitmonchan but was weak to Magmar. Though I can see Scyther easily making a comeback for that slot because as the metagame has progressed, you see fire less and less often. Except for Charizard. Charizard is actually really good now. JK, it's still shit and always will be in this format. Because of Lickitung and Electabuzz inflicting special conditions for only 1 energy, Dragonite has actually seen some more play, using its step-in power to move into the active position, removing the special condition on your active, and then just retreating back to the bench with the help of a Dodrio, getting your previous active Pokemon back into the active position without the special condition. Ditto and Clefable both still see play as scare tactics, a Pokemon to put down onto your bench, daring your opponent to play their big powerful Pokemon with its big powerful attack. Though both of those can be easily countered too, they still serve their function. As Promo Mewtwo gained more and more popularity as one of the most powerful cards in base fossil, much as the pattern of this entire video, its counter also became more powerful. You could drop a Promo Mew, attach 1 energy, and you were ready to OHKO a Mewtwo that had just used an energy absorption before they could ever Psyburn you. With Control becoming more popular, Ghastly became more popular. Like most of the other popular Pokemon in Control decks, it could deal incremental damage for 1 energy and even inflict a special condition off of a coin flip. Because of that, it was a great partner for Lickitung. It covered Lickitung's weakness, had no weakness of its own, a free retreat cost, and its energy conversion attack was the best way to get double colorless energies back into your hand for your Kangaskhans, your Wigglytuffs, your Chanseys. It was one of the best, if not the best, counter to Mr. Mime. For that purpose alone, you will see Ghastly as a 2 to 4 of in Hyper Aggro decks, just as a way to get around Mr. Mime. Now that we've moved into a grindier metagame, Maintenance has become the most stable way to draw cards. Oak and Bill are still in decks, but if you're wanting to preserve some of the cards you have in your hand, or if you're just looking to outlast your opponent, Maintenance is going to be a more reliable way to draw cards, but also preserve your deck count. With the focus shifting to Control, Mankey of all cards is seeing more play, and has become a popular way to just gain more game knowledge. On off turns, you can look at your own prize cards, but the most important information you're going to get from Mankey is after you've used a Lass, you're going to be able to look at the top of your opponent's deck and know when they are drawing into their energy removals again, or their Oaks, or any other powerful tools their deck may have. The important takeaway here is that you know what they're going to draw before they do, so you can better prepare on your turn before you pass to theirs. Knowledge is power, and Mankey provides that knowledge, at the cost of it being a bench liability. Across card games, you tend to see a counterbalance develop over time between aggro, control, and mid-range. Since Base Fossil is skewing more towards control right now with cards like Lass and Psyduck, I feel like the next step is going to be a higher focus on Pokemon's version of mid-range, which is going to be a higher focus on the Pokemon themselves rather than the trainers. Not that those decks don't already exist in this format. I would argue that most Wigglytuff builds are mid-range, loading the deck full of a bunch of one-offs of utility Pokemon that have varied usefulness across scenarios. Currently, there is a heavy skew towards Psychic and Normal types that I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon, but I do think that leaves room for some more mid-range style Fire and Grass decks to come back. So I will be featuring those in upcoming videos. I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos that we'll be featuring in this series. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. I'm going to be using the same nostalgic video format as 8 years ago, this time with a better camera and slightly better editing. I thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.